This is Happy Monkey.
This is Happy Monkey.
Happy Monkey. Happy Monkey.
This is Happy Monkey.
Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
It's your boy Tech King. I'm out here, living like a villain on penicillin. You know how we get down. And I just want to let y'all know a nice little quick tip. Use a filter, and you don't have to clip your blunts. Filter, smoke the whole blunt. Done. Take it, Roach Killer, we out here. Gang gang movie viral. Bow.
Do it, baby.
So yes, everybody. Today in the motherfucking Happy Monkey podcast, it's all the way special because we in a different location and everything, undisclosed location, but it's awesome and it's fucking guitars and pianos and drums and all the good stuff is around here. Different vibe, awesome vibe, a lot of colors. And we got a OG here in the building. And when I say OG, me and Vlad don't say that term lightly. I know a lot of people like to say that term, but that term is not taken lightly from me and Mr. Vlad here. This is an OG, special to us, because been supporting us every time, just ever since he met us. It's very, very dear to my heart because this man, we was just walking down the parade, down my city that I love so much, front line, getting emotional moments together. This is special. This man is special to us. Vlad, you want to give him better details than I can.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen. Today we got a special treat for you guys. This man is not only a cannabis revolution. I believe he is a revolutionary for human beings and humanity.
Absolutely.
Because the energy and the love that he brings anywhere he goes is unmatched. Let's forget about titles and what's on paper. That's a whole nother level. And that's the reason that he has been coined the godfather of cannabis. He founded Harborside. He's the founder of Last Prisoner Project.
Absolutely.
He is our cannabis angel on earth. Our brother from another mother, Steve DeAngelo.
Yeah.
We could have added a billion more titles, my friend, but friend is the best title so far. All right.
It's the very best. That's like that's like trumpets walking into the castle. No, it's beautiful. I'm so happy to be here with you, and this whole visit to New York it's such a special time for me because this was where I started, right? I mean, people know about all the work that I've done in California and Harborside, right? But I started here on the East Coast. I grew up in Washington, D.C. I marched the first time in that Fifth Avenue Pop Parade when I was 16 years old in 1975.
Wow.
Right?
Nice.
And in those years, they wouldn't give us a permit, right?
Yeah, you just had to come out with your people.
They wouldn't give us a permit, and so we retaliated by marching from Washington Square Park up Fifth Avenue the wrong way against traffic.
So that's what started it. Okay, you see? That's crazy. So it organically started. So y'all was like, fuck it, you know what? They don't want to give us a permit. Let's just do it anyway.
We're going to do it anyway. Exactly.
That thought is crazy because that's what you basically do. That's what starts shit, right? Or like, fuck it, like.
If you wait for someone to give you your freedom, you'll never get it. Nobody ever gives you your freedom. You take your freedom. You demand your freedom. Nobody will ever give you your freedom.
History has shown us that.
History shown. Look, the motherfuckers who took your freedom away in the first place are not going to give it back.
No,
they're not going to give it back. You got to seize it from them.
Right.
That's why they took it in the first place. So yeah, but then this year, right? It's after what? Up like 50 fucking years or something like this, right? I'm marching in the front of this parade. On one side of me, on the other side of me, there's only like 5 or 6 of us old original yippies left. And like we're all gray-haired, and we're all wrinkly, we're all kind of limping along, and we're all ragged, and I'm pushing my brother Aaron K in his wheelchair. Aaron has this like photographic memory, so as I'm pushing him, he's reciting like all the names of all the people that we worked with over the years and telling me where they are today, which ones had passed, which ones are still locked up, what's going on, right? And there was only like a half dozen of us that made it to that front of that march. But you know, we fucking won, right? We persisted through all of those decades. And there were years when we didn't have a clue, right? We didn't have a clue whether we were going to win or we were going to lose. Like 1984, 1985, 1986, those Reagan years, those Bush years. It was we had no clue if they were going to, you know, pull us off the fucking streets and we would never ever see the light of day again, any minute. And you guys know that feeling.
Yes, very well.
And but we weren't willing to live in a world where cannabis was illegal and where we were going to be hunted for the rest of our lives. So we kept on and we persisted, and that's why this day finally fucking came.
Yeah, this was crazy. This was really emotional for us, you know, native New Yorkers. You know, as much as everybody, we claim this island. Like, we love this island. This is where we're from. We're not from nowhere else. Like, our parents got here and we were born here. Like, this is where we're from. We love this. There's nothing in the world. I can go to anywhere in the world. I take New York with me. You know what I mean? Like, this is where I'm from. So, in my whole era, you just said Reagan, Bush. That was like our growing up. That was us growing up, being born. We were born in this era, you know? We saw resistance. Then Giuliani resisted hard. Our teenage era, hard. You couldn't smoke outside. There was no way you could smoke outside. We were spending nights in jail just for smoking outside. You know what I mean? This is we're not talking serious crime here. We're not talking even selling weed. This is just smoking weed. We were spending nights in jail, right? Very, very difficult. So for me to be able to walk down the part of town that we're not even from,
Right.
because we're part of the town that's not even talked about. So to be in the heart of the city, you know, 34th Street, 31st Street, go to Chelsea, to Union Square, that's a whole different planet. And it's like to smoke freely, to be escorted by the people who fucking tormented us the whole time. There's another win. That's a win for me. I don't care.
That was crazy.
I don't know. I know things, again, we have a lot of work to be done. That's a given. But I'll take that win right now.
Tormented is the word, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really, really good word for what was done to our communities over all of these years and over all of these decades. And you know, there was just this really righteous joy that happens when that fucking knee comes off of your neck before you're dead, right?
Word.
It's pretty fucking joyous.
Word.
It feels pretty fucking good. Not like, you know, I put a bunch of joyous stuff out on my social media because I'm like, for me, this is great. It's like, just the fact that I can light a 3 fucking gram spliff in the middle of Broadway and I got 6 cops on either side. I can literally reach out and touch these guys, right? Huge cloud of smoke coming out and nothing bad happens to me. The cops just keep on escorting me. That, in the trajectory of my life, that's something to really celebrate, right?
That's a bucket list situation for you.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge, right? I mean, fucking tears were coming down my face, you know? I mean, really hit me. And then I started getting some feedback, you know, on my feeds of people who are like, but yeah, you know, that's not going to bring back my life that got fucked up. That's not going to bring my dog back that got murdered by the cops. And it's true, right? It's like,
and you're right.
There's I can't think of anything in the world, because I know it, because I've suffered it, that feels worse than knowing that you've been done an injustice and you will never see justice for that. It will never, ever fucking happen, right? And we, as a community, we've suffered so much of that for so long, right? So I get the pain, man. I totally relate to everybody who's looking at it from that point, because I look at that from that point of view too. I mean, there's times when I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You're going to make it legal now?
Right.
After all this fucking misery, after all the tormenting that's been done? What was that about? For fucking what was that about, right? And it's hard to accept, and we'll never, you know, you can't really accept it. You just have to live with it. But
my perspective is, Steve, we can't change the past. We can only change the future. So we have to learn from the past, and we have to never forget the past. but we have to try to fix the future. And right now, what makes me feel happy, like Ramon said, I was born in the 80s, grew up in the 80s and 90s in New York. I thought it was normal to be arrested up to 20 times from my teenage years to my mid-20s. Normal, because they did it so much that it was like, today they took Steve, he'll be out in the morning. They took Ramon. It was like normal. We accepted it as a way of life. So for me to think now that the generations that followed and that we played a role in helping that generation not have to live like this anymore, how much productive members of society will they be now that they don't have to be arrested 15, 20 times? Now that they don't have that on their record to get into universities, they don't have that on their record to get a job. How much more productive can these urban areas be? Because we already know that cannabis was a scalpel they used to oppress these areas, just like they did to me, just like they did to Ramon. And now that they don't have that scalpel anymore, how much more will the flowers grow from the concrete than they did before?
I think there's going to be a lift in a whole bunch of different ways, right? So, there's the whole impact of the criminal justice system and the horrifying shit that's happened there. And that's going to get dialed back. Of course, it won't be eliminated entirely, but we take at least one arrow out of their quiver that they've been able to use there. But then you start just thinking about the health effects, right? So what do we know? That that there's a lot of health conditions that communities of color suffer from that are really effectively addressed by cannabis, and those communities are underserved by traditional health care. So I think we're going to see a lift in people's physical well-being. We'll certainly see a lift in mental well-being, because we know that when you legalize cannabis, consumption of alcohol, the consumption of opioids, the consumption of other harmful substances goes down. So there's going to be a lift to people's mentality.
Hell yeah.
And the really exciting thing about New York is, and people who are listening may not really fully realize that from the perspective of just being a New Yorker, but the law that has been passed here, that you guys, Vlad and Ramon and Monkey, were so important to getting passed, it's like the most progressive cannabis law in the country. You've got these amazing provisions like the cottage cannabis business license that allows people to grow 3,000 square feet worth of canopy and sell it directly to the public.
That's crazy.
I mean, this is like revolutionary. It doesn't exist really anywhere else in the country. And it's going to spread the prosperity a lot more widely and make it a lot more possible for people to get into legal cannabis. And so that should also bring some financial prosperity into neighborhoods that have really been suffering. And one of the great things that's also beginning to happen, it's just beginning, right? But we're beginning to get cannabis prisoners home.
Word, that's big right
and
there.
I want to thank
right
you, because everybody that's out here, everybody in the East Coast, in New York, for those that don't know, Steve founded and his brother organization called Last Prisoner Project that we had a fundraiser ad for Happy Monkey, and it just helps prisoners come home, fight legal fees, have support. Not only financially, mentally. I remember we all asked for the addresses, and we all made everybody from the company send a letter,
postcards,
and it's just like to see like that, how much effect I've had me watching you bring some of these guys home and women. That I know that has to be very gratifying, to see like that. You've brought these people back to society after being basically losing their lives over this plant. I don't think there's anything that feels better. I mean, smoking that joint in the middle of Broadway felt really good, but I don't think that it felt as good as seeing Richard DeLisi or Michael Thompson walk out of the sentences that they were serving, and that happened just in the course of the past few months. So it's spectacular. We're still trying to figure out the number of cannabis prisoners that are left in prison in New York now, but I've heard a promise from people who can make it happen that every single one of those people is going to come home. So we're going to start working on You
that.
heard it first. Wow. And if you have a family member or a friend that's incarcerated long term for cannabis, reach out to Last Prisoner Project. Reach out to Happy Monkey, and we will add those names to that list.
Yeah, one of the real challenges is just finding out who's locked up on cannabis charges, because they don't surprise, surprise, they don't want us to know that information. So it's hard to find. The records aren't kept very well, and it's difficult to extract them. So please, if anybody's got a relative or a friend, a loved one who's doing time for cannabis in New York, let us know about it, and then we'll add them to the list and do everything we can to bring them home to you as soon as possible.
Let me ask you a question, Steve, because remember, you were speaking about before me and Ramon were born. You said 1974 and 75. What was the difference in the energy in New York then than when you walked, a couple of days ago in the parade?
Well, it changed a lot, right? When I first came to New York, it was 1974, 1975, and it was almost kind of like the 1960s, right? You would go down to Washington Square Park, and people would be playing frisbee and blowing bubbles and smoking weed, and there'd be drum circles, and people would be singing songs and playing guitars. People of all different races mingling with each other, having a really good time, right? And there was this really positive vibration, like change was in the air. And in those years, we kept on winning, like from 74 to 78. All around the country, we passed decriminalization measures in different cities and different states. In 1978, Jimmy Carter came out and endorsed nationwide decriminalization of cannabis. Right?
Crazy.
And so we thought that we had the thing. So that was like this really hopeful time. And, I was this like 16-year-old kid who grew up in Washington, D.C., and I got to come to New York, and I fell in with the yippies, so I was doing all this political work, and then I met a bunch of weed smugglers, and then I got these great weed connections, started taking the weed back to D.C., started making a little bit of money. It was like this great time of my life. I started opening up yippie communes and doing all this political stuff, publishing underground newspapers. It was great. And then Reagan got elected in 1980.
Wow.
And none of us saw it coming, right? Nobody believed that this guy, this right-wing B-movie actor could possibly get elected president, right? And then once he got elected president, none of us imagined how vicious things would turn and how quickly they would turn vicious. And so part of what they did was they declared, psychoactive chemical warfare on our communities.
Pretty much.
And so as soon as Reagan is elected, he puts George H.W. Bush, the old guy, down to South Florida. He's the head of the South Florida Task Force. So in those days, you got great big freighter boats full of weed coming from Colombia, from La Guajira, right, from Jamaica. And it's beautiful weed, and it's inexpensive. And like when I was a kid, I would go out and get on these little, 25-foot cabin cruisers and run out to 13, 14 miles offshore. And there was like a whole row of ships out there you could go buy weed from and then just smuggle it back into the States. So there was this, a lot of weed. It was good weed. It was cheap weed, and that was kind of what was driving the whole hippie thing that was happening then, and all the weed that was being smoked in Washington Square Park, and all those good vibrations. Bush targets the big freighters, right? And they're easy to target because they're big and they're slow moving. So he puts all of the U.S. military, which is like winding down from the fight with Russia, on them, and so what happens is the weed stops, right? But you've got all these people who were making money off of weed, Colombians and Cubans who were making money smuggling the weed, right? And the CIA gave a green light for them to start smuggling coke. And
that should change the game.
They start
stop the weed and bring the coke.
Well, they just went ahead and like, fuck
yeah,
it,
I mean,
go
there's
ahead and
books
do
that
coke.
have been written about. There's this guy named Gary Webb who wrote a book.
I knew it, but I just didn't know the sequence. Like I knew that they gave the green light for the cocaine, but I didn't know the sequence.
First they had to kill the camps. I was going down to Miami, right? I would go down to Miami, I'd be trying to buy a couple 100 pounds of weed to take up to New York, and I'd be looking around, I'd finally find some, right? And the guy would be like, all right, well, I'll sell you 100 pounds, but you have to take a pound of coke. Right?
Package deal.
And I didn't want to do it, right? And I'll be honest with you, I resisted, and eventually, like most of the pot dealers in my generation, I was like, all right, that's what I got to do, right?
Yep.
And that's how cocaine started seeping in along all of the routes that had been established for cannabis in our communities, and we fucking poisoned ourselves with their shit.
I had no idea about that. I knew about the green light for the cocaine, but I didn't know that they stopped the weed, and I didn't know that.
Nobody would sell their fucking shit if there was weed around to sell.
Right. And this a new thing. Nobody knew about coke back then, right?
Well,
Crazy.
here's
not
the
as
thing.
much.
We had been lied to so much, right? We've been lied to about weed. We've been lied to about mushrooms. We've been lied to about LSD. So when they told us shit about cocaine, we just assumed that they were lying about cocaine too. Okay. Well, cocaine ended up being really fucking devastating shit for our
Really,
communities,
Really,
right?
really devastating.
And all of us, just lost so many people. I can't even think about it now. And so that's how it came down, right? And there's always this component, right? Like societies change according to the kind of psychoactives that people are ingesting. One of the reasons that I've been so passionate about cannabis reform my whole life is because, like, wherever you go and there's people who are smoking weed, wherever we are in the world, there's certain things that are consistent about weed smokers, right? So creativity, yeah.
the time.
Yes.
Conformity, nah, right?
No.
Freedom and liberty, yeah,
All the time, yeah.
right? Authority and government, nah, it's
Yeah.
like inclusion,
unanimous.
everybody comes in,
That's unanimous everywhere all over the world.
Wherever
Unanimous.
we are, we're the same
Unanimous,
people.
yeah.
We're the same, and we are a beautiful people because we are inclusive, because we do care about nature, because we welcome creativity, because we understand that every single human being on this planet has something to contribute to what we're all doing in this human experiment, right?
Word.
And we're fucking resilient, right? We don't stop. We keep on going. It doesn't matter how many decades it takes. Boom, boom, boom. We've been going, and now we're changing the world. We're changing the world in some real and significant and serious ways. So that's the hope, right? That as more and more people ingest cannabis, as they dial down their alcohol consumption, their tobacco consumption, their pharmaceutical consumption, they start getting woke a little bit. They start exercising a little bit. They start meditating a little bit more. They start dancing a little bit more. They start being joyous a little bit more, right? And then they start finding it becomes kinder. It's easier to be kind to people. It's easier to be gentle with people, right? It's easier to give when other people are giving to you. And we can change this dynamic, right? This whole dynamic that we live in our culture and our society of there's not enough.
Yes.
There's not enough.
It's never
So
enough.
you got to grab everything that you can. You got to grab it as quick. You got to make sure the other people aren't getting more than you. And it puts all of us in this place where it's like we're constantly at battle.
Yes.
Well, fuck that. It's not why we were born. It's not what we were put on this planet to do. That's not what the trip is about. We were put here to create. We were put here to love. We were put here to dance. We were put here to celebrate the beauty of nature and the joy of being alive, right? To grow, not to be watching each other's back all the fucking time, right? So that's my hope. My hope is we smoke more weed, we eat more mushrooms, we take more LSD, we all get groovier, we understand joy a little bit more. We all get in a place that we can give, that we can flex, that we can be kind, that we can be gentle.
Yeah, man.
And hopefully that bubbles up all the way up to the top, all the way up to the top. And people who have real resources and real control have an ability to join like this new evolution of human beings, man, into something that's life affirming.
So what do you think, Steve? Like, you watched the evolution of California, and you were part of them, making this plant part of society and coming above board, and it going adult use and all these things. So, how do you feel after you watching that process, and now you watching it here in New York? How do you think long term is going to impact the New York, the country, and the world as far as like New York legalization where we are currently right now?
Well, I'm already seeing it, right? I mean, you could see it. Like I paid this visit to a store called Higher Standards over in the Chelsea market.
Nice.
Right?
Friends of ours,
Right?
Sasha and Adam, they're good people.
And it was really, it's like I've been to a lot of head shops all over the world, right? I've seen a lot of cannabis accessories and stuff, but I've never seen such a finely curated set of such impressively designed cannabis accessories and lifestyle items.
Yeah,
right?
it's
So they
beautiful
got,
in there, yeah. It's
right,
beautiful,
like bombs and trays by Keith Haring, right?
Yeah, that's dope.
And who's the other big designer? Jonathan Adler. They've got all these pieces by Jonathan Adler.
Jonathan Adler, Mr. Ralph over there?
And then they had like their own pieces that they're doing, right? That like they had these solid white porcelain bongs that were just had such an elegant and beautiful
It's
line,
beautiful,
right?
yeah.
And you pick them up and they just feel good in your hand.
Feels like you're in a boutique cannabis. Like,
Absolutely.
You're in
store.
something.
Yeah.
Like normal.
Higher standards.
Well, even beyond normal, right? Maybe it's New York normal, but New York normal is not Idaho normal. Okay. Nothing against Idaho. New
No,
York
but
normal is
but
not
we get it.
California
We get
normal
it.
either.
Yeah,
Okay.
we get it.
New York is the place where you have the largest number of creatives who have come from all over the world in the smallest concentration of space.
real.
Like you come to this town and you start doing things and you just like run into people. You have all these collisions with
We
people.
were
It's
just
like,
talking about that earlier, right?
I was just thinking about you, right?
crazy.
Because it's dense, right? And you got so many talented, creative people from so many, and they all came from somewhere else. So they come here, they get their hands on something really new and cool. They do something that nobody else has been able to do it because there's so many of them and they come with so many different perspectives and they all kind of feed off of each other, right? And they do something brilliant and then they push it back out to every place that they came from.
Absolutely.
So New York is this constantly churning engine of culture that's being fed by the world, right? And that's pumping back out to the world. And it's true that LA is, capital of entertainment and music, but those it doesn't have the same concentration, right? Like even if the same number of creatives in LA goes on for like forever and ever and ever and ever, right? So like you don't run into them. You got to make an appointment, then you got to drive 4 hours cross town in order to get to see them, right? And here in New York, you're walking down the street and boom, they're in your face.
There you go.
So yeah, no, it's going to be fast. It's going to be brilliant. It's going to be far-reaching. It's going to go around the world. From a regulatory point of view, there's some beautiful things. The cottage industry licenses that I was talking about, they say that 50% of licenses are going to go to social equity licensees. They don't say what a social equity licensee is yet.
Right.
But that's,
And the first 50% also.
The first 50%. So if that really happens, then that's also huge. There's some bad stuff. There's a potency tax on THC. So the stronger your weed is, the more tax that you're going to pay on it.
Exactly.
Okay, great. But do you want to smoke 18% weed, or do you want to smoke 28% weed? And if that 28% weed is going to have a hefty tax on it in the legal market, are you going to buy it in that legal store, or are you going to keep on buying it from the person you can buy it for the past 15 years?
There you go.
Right? So I don't like the potency tax. I think it's something that's going to be copied. I think that it comes from a really stupid philosophy. There's this guy named Michael Kleinman, who's a professor from California, who's influential with the regulators, who has this whole theory that goes something like this. Smoking cannabis is bad for you, and it's especially bad for at-risk categories of people, which basically is people of color, poor people, and young people. And therefore, we have to make cannabis more expensive for them so that they're less able to afford it, so that they can't hurt themselves. Okay?
What?
Yeah.
That sounds
Sounds crazy.
Yeah,
that sounds
right.
like...
Therefore, we're going to
madness.
increase the tax. We're going to increase the taxes and do what? Drive them to the underground market, right? Where the cannabis isn't tested, right? Where people are going to be vulnerable to the same kind of things.
And there's enormous amounts of that. So you're just going to let them do whatever they want. So, again, we got the legend here, and I know we could get deep, and we could get super, super deep, or we could get political, we could get righteous with it. But I want to know a little bit more about Steve, right? So I'm going to get a little bit, maybe a little bit personal. I want to know young Steve, maybe 16-year-old, 15, maybe 12-year-old Steve. I don't know. You go tell us right now. But can you tell us, please tell us, because I want to know, because, you're the weed god, you know what I mean? You are a weed god, right? Because there's plenty of you guys.
Yeah, we don't have just one god in this religion.
There's plenty of you guys, but you're a legend.
And we got more goddesses than we got gods.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. Well, we got all sorts of
We're
situations,
lucky that way.
right? We're lucky. We got a lot of people who support the situation, right? But you are one of them, and I would love to know, when was the first time you got high?
Yeah, me too. That's an interesting
love affair.
question.
What was it? A joint? Was it a bong? I want to know all the details.
I was 13. I think I was 13 or 12 or 13, something like that. 7th grade. First few days of 7th grade, in those days there was this thing called junior high school, 7th, 8th, ninth grade. And so I was in a new school, right? And
This is in D.C.?
this is in the outskirts of D.C.
Okay.
in a place called Tacoma Park Junior High School. And some kids asked me whether I wanted to go to a Mexican tea party after school. And because all the weed in those days is Mexican, and we called it tea.
Mexican tea party.
So I was like, yeah, absolutely, for sure, let's go. And I get over there, and we're at their house, their parents are at work, smoke a joint, nothing happens. So I'm disappointed. I'm walking home. And I start walking through this park, right? And the park is just like a shortcut for me. It's like a way to get from point A to point B as quickly as I can. I'm a 13-year-old boy. I usually don't notice anything that's going on in that park. I'm thinking about wherever it is that I'm headed to and whatever it is that I'm doing,
Just cutting
right?
through.
Cutting through. Until this day, right? So I'm going through the park, and I start noticing this heat on the back of my neck. And I'm like, whoa, that's wild. Like I take a look up, I see the sun, and the sun is filtering through the leaves, and I can see like the veins in the leaves and the way that they're glowing from the light, right? And then I hear this crunch underneath my feet. It's the dried leaves, and I can smell the aroma of the leaves that are coming up there, right? And then I hear in the background this gurgling of a creek of water going over the rocks, right? And then I start feeling little beads of sweat popping out on the back of my neck. And there was just this moment where I felt connected to all of it, to the sun, to the trees, to the leaves, to the water, to everything that was going on.
All these senses were awakened.
Yeah, all
right there.
5 senses. He felt all 5 senses. Right.
And I was connected. And I was connected to the web of life in a way that I'd never felt before. I'd never felt that before.
He stopped to smell the roses.
I stopped to smell the roses, and at first I didn't realize what happened to me. I just knew that it was this really profound and moving thing, and I recognized that it was connected to the weed, obviously. It didn't take me long to figure that out. But I'm like on the other side of this, and I'm like, wow, what went on there? And I'm like, I don't know, but I sure want more of it, that's for sure, man, right? And I was already, an anti-war activist, anti-racist activist by then, and so somebody does something wrong, you stand up and you fight them on it. So by the time I got home, I was like, all right, I'm not going to stop smoking weed, and I'm not going to be a criminal for the rest of my life. So I guess we're going to have to start fighting this battle, and that's how it all started. Looking backwards, I've as my life has developed, my spiritual path has taken a nature-based direction, and so I recognize that experience really as my first genuine spiritual epiphany moment, experience, time, and I've had many others since then, but that was the first one, and it was I fell in love right away, and that love affair continues to this day.
Interesting. 13-year-old Steve smoking in the park. Mexican tea party.
Mexican tea. Mexican tea. It took
it
a while for it to
was
take
it a blunt?
It was a joint. It was a joint. It was Mexican brick weed. It wasn't the worst, looking backwards again, wasn't the worst Mexican brick weed that I ever smoked.
We all smoked the worst of the worst before.
But, yeah.
So I know, Steve, you've been spending a lot of time in Mexico.
That was beautiful, by the way.
And yeah, that was beautiful. So, like, what do you see, like, the contrast, the history, the future of the role that Mexico is going to play? Because we already know that they already have played a big role in history.
Forever.
So now that they are going federally legal and they are coming above board, what do you see and what do you feel as far as, like, the society, the people, the industry?
Well, there's, a couple interesting things, right? One, Mexico is going to be a giant in the world of global cannabis, right? And that, there's a lot of reasons for that. It's the largest Spanish-speaking country in the world. It has the largest Spanish-speaking university system. It has the second largest stock exchange. It has the largest pharmaceutical business in all of Latin America. So there's a lot of advantages, right? It has perfect microclimates for growing really high-quality consumable cannabis. It has other agricultural land where you grow lots of hemp. So it has these attributes that are present in the modern world. But if you look back in Mexican history, before the European invasion, Mexico played this really unique role in the Americas. It was the place that corn was first developed as a domesticated crop, and it's the first place where people understood how to grow corn and corn-based agriculture. And then the Mexicans taught people all over the Americas that corn-based agriculture, which has been the staple of food in that region for thousands and thousands of years. They did the same thing with visionary plants like peyote and mushrooms. So if you take a look at the spiritual traditions of Native Americans, you can go all the way up into almost into Canada, and you can go all the way down into the Amazon, and you will find native indigenous spiritual systems that are centered around the ingestion of visionary plants and communing with nature, much as I did on that walk through the park, much as many cannabis consumers do when they go out for a walk and smoke a joint and sit under a tree and listen to the birds.
Mexico's gonna be crazy. Mexico, and imagine people are already going to Mexico. Imagine all the people going to Mexico now, like when shit get really popping in Mexico.
Well, it's a great time to go now, okay? And I'll tell you why. Because it's kind of like it's a great time to be in New York right now. What we learned in California is, once cannabis is made fully legal, there's a whole raft of regulations that come in, and where you can do it, and how you can do it, and how you have to package it, and just they think up rules about stuff that you never even imagined that there could be rules about. There's rules about the rules and about the rules and rules, right? I mean, it just gets really, really starting to get constricted. So this period of time from between when it's not illegal anymore, so like you can go out on the street and you can walk down the sidewalk in New York and smoke a joint, so the illegality's dialed down, but the licenses aren't issued, the regulations aren't in place yet. That's a really sweet time when the gray market, right, when people who may not be licensed, but they're still active cannabis people, and they've been active cannabis people for a long time, have an opportunity to start coming out of the shadows into the light and doing their thing more openly, and our community gets to meet ourselves, right? It's like, think about how many of us there are in just in New York City alone, right?
Yes.
But we've all been forced to hide from each other. And that's really, it's depressing, it's a drag, it's dispiriting. So one of the reasons that there was always such a beautiful feeling in the Monkey, right, is because it was the first time that the illegality got dialed down just enough that we could start coming out of the caves or the apartments where we've been hiding, right? And come together in like a group more than 6 people, right?
Exactly.
And now that's going to happen on this massive level for the next, 18 months or 2 years here before those regulations get laid down and get really heavy. Brothers and sisters, enjoy it. Take it to the max. Push it to the limit. Do everything that you want to do. Do it now. Do it big. Have a really great time and make sure to invite me.
I like that, definitely. We out here, we gonna have Steve out here drilling like that out here. That's good, funny, man. I think it's a great time to be alive. I think we are very fortunate to be a part of this whole movement, and everything. I think everything is aligning the way it's supposed to be right now.
Yeah, I mean, this whole trip's just been like this beautiful victory lap, right? I always had this fantasy, right, that when we finally won, that like somebody, like the President of the United States maybe, would call me up and, go, Steve, I just wanted to let you know now that it's, now that it's legal and we've decided that it should be legal, I just wanted to apologize to you and to the cannabis community for all of these years of torment and suffering that you've been put through. So I'd always hope for that, or at least like a great big ticker tape parade with marching bands, and, right? And
get crazy.
We haven't gotten either one of those things yet, but man, that parade on the 1st of May that we were in, so far, that's as close as I've gotten to what I really want, right? It was a beautiful, beautiful moment. It's as close as we got
That's big.
to that apology, to that, just those New York cops not fucking with me when I was smoking a joint in their faces, right? That wasn't,
Thank you, bro.
it's not like a
That's crazy.
presidential apology, but boy, it sure felt good.
I want to tell you here in public in front of everybody because somebody told this to me and I want to tell it to you. The impact and the effect that you've had on the cannabis community in the world, you may never be alive to really receive all the flowers that you deserve, but we want to give them to you now because we know what you've done in California and all over the country and all over the world. And I want to tell you that thank you, because if it wasn't people like you, there wouldn't be people like us.
Yeah, pretty much. Thank you very much, my friend.
Well, thank you for the appreciation. It's, it was always about the love. It was always about our community. And knowing that not only are we winning now, right, but there's generations coming behind me who really understand what this plan is about, who really understand what the greater mission is. Legalization is just like this one little goal, right? This one little beginning part of the mission that we're up to, because what we're really up to is creating a world that lives by the lessons that this plant and all of the other plants teach us, right? And creating that world where creativity really is valued over conformity, and where freedom is valued over authority, and where nature is valued over greed, and where inclusion is valued over exclusion and discrimination, right? That's going to take generations for us to build. It's, we got a lot of toxic mess to clean up. We got a lot of hemp fields to grow. We've got a lot of inventions to make before we create that that beautiful world. But we're on our way, and we've got the blueprint, and we've got the culture. And as I was growing up, there wasn't anybody 60 years old that you could talk to. You could not trust any of them. That's why we said, don't trust anyone over 30. That was our motto, and we lived by that motto, man. We lived by that motto because you had to. Back then, you had to. It's different now. Our culture's been going long enough that we got a little bit of a track record, right? We don't have to when we first ran into psychedelics, it was like, we didn't know what we were, the first time I did LSD, I was 13 years old. Somebody gave me a 400 microgram chunk of orange sunshine, and I went and figured it out on my own, all alone for, the next 12 hours. And now, people understand, well, it's better to kind of have a guide with you, and someone who's done it before, set your intention and have an altar and do a little meditation. And we've kind of learned this stuff, right?
That's great.
It's just so beautiful to be a part of. So thank you for the appreciation, and I give it back to you guys. You've just captured the spirit of this plant and what it should be, the way that it's used to connect people, to bring about some justice, to bring about some redemption, to bring about some healing, to produce joy in this world, and carrying that mission forward. So it's just I value our love and our friendship and our brotherhood so much, and we're just getting started.
We're just getting started. So now that New York is legal, right, and now that it's a big statement, what do you think? How? We're not. First of all, I know you're not. You can predict it because we don't know. Vlad don't know. Ralph don't know. But we're asking the question. When do you think it would take the rest of the nation to get on board? How long would you think would it take?
Well, the rest of the nation,
the
rest of the nation's basically on board, right? You got a few states now that haven't passed any form of cannabis reform, but they're getting, very few and far between. Mississippi has medical cannabis. Georgia passed a bad medical cannabis law.
Dakota.
Louisiana has a medical cannabis law. They just expanded it. Texas has a medical cannabis law. Very bad cannabis law. They're expanding it. Okay.
Right.
Idaho, I think, doesn't have anything. I'm not sure about North Dakota, but there's very few states that haven't reformed their cannabis laws in some way. The big sticker isn't even Washington anymore, right? Because the most representative body in Washington, the House of Representatives, where people are elected every 2 years, and there's proportional representation, right, where the number of Congress people is determined by the population of a jurisdiction. So many people in the Bronx, you got so many Congress people. So many people in Brooklyn, you got so many Congress people, right? The problem is the Senate. The Senate is a profoundly undemocratic institution because every state gets 2 senators. That means Wyoming, that has 1 million people in it, has as many senators as California, that has 40 million in it, which means that each one of their votes from Wyoming is worth 20 times what my vote as a Californian is at the federal level, at the Senate level, right?
That's crazy.
So that is a profound problem that affects cannabis legalization and everything else in this country. If you really want to start making positive change in the United States of America, then you make the Senate a representative institution just like every other elected body should be, okay? It's one person, one vote. That's the principle. Not one Wyoming, 20 votes, and one Californian, 1/20th of a vote. That's not cool. So I don't know. I mean, that's a problem. The other problem is the Biden administration, which is not friendly to cannabis, even though they made promises about being friendly to cannabis. And so I think that the only way that we see change at the federal level in the course of the next 4 years is by taking these people's feet and bringing them so close to the fire and holding them so close to the fire for so long, and don't care how bad that room starts smelling or how loud they holler, right, until they give us what we need. That's the only way it's going to happen, right? It's going to require a lot of determination and a big push. The good part is that Senator Schumer, who is the majority lead of the Senate, he shook my hand and was very nice to us at the rally. He like I think most intelligent politicians, understands that he has a lot more to gain from embracing cannabis reform than by resisting it. But remember that Joe Biden, he is not going to run again. He does not care what we think. He's just going to do what he wants to do because he does not need to get reelected again. And Kamala Harris is just going to do whatever Joe Biden wants her to do, right? Because she wants him to anoint her to be the next president. So we just can't expect too much from those people. We just have to kick them in their asses until they do what we want.
Keep on, like you said. I always say, like a good friend of mine says, we're not in the cannabis industry, we're in the fighting industry. We stop, we celebrate our wins, like we just got right now, and then we keep on fighting. That's how it goes, right?
It keeps on going. It keeps on going. That's it.
But like, what better mission could you have, right? It's like, here, you get to represent a flower that heals people who are sick, that brings joy to people, that helps people connect to the world of spirit and connect to each other, right? That turns a walk through the park into a spiritual event and turns an argument into a discussion. What else would you rather do with your life than represent a plant like that, right? I can't think of a better mission.
No, definitely not many left. And it's just crazy to see. I think the consensus that they said that I think like 80-90% of the country agrees on cannabis. There is nothing left on planet Earth that 80% or 90% of the country agree on. There's nothing left.
It's
so divided. There's nothing left that there's that many percentage agreements on anything.
It's the only bipartisan political consensus in the United States today. And that tells us something, right? It's like, okay, well, if we all agree on that, maybe like we finally get federal legalization and we have this, like, could you imagine, like, the national smoke-in, right? Where at 4:20 p.m. on a certain day, everybody goes out into their front yards, right? A whole country, everywhere, every neighborhood, everywhere, man. Everybody's out, everybody gets together, everybody smokes together. No, they can't be in their own front yards. They got to go to somebody else's front yard in a neighborhood that they've never been in.
I like that. I like that.
That's a good one.
I like that. That's that was the feeling I got right there on the parade. I like that one.
Yeah.
I like that. Are we missing anything? I don't want to not miss anything. We covered everything you got. That's beautiful. I just want to make sure. So
Steve, it's time for the $1 million question.
Absolutely.
And you and your global, cultured, international, from the beginning to the end knowledge, and you seeing us from the beginning to what we are now, and really, really value whatever opinion you have, because you've watched and we really value opinion. The $1 million question we ask everybody is, if you had to describe Happy Monkey in one word, what would it be and why? What it represents, the movement, the club, everything that you know about us.
Oh, Happy Monkey's the tip of the spear of cannabis freedom and cannabis style, and the capital of the world.
That's what it is?
That's what I believe, man. Why?
Yeah.
Tip of the spear.
Because you're connected to the plant, and you're connected to people who love the plant, and you take the mission of bringing those people and that plant together really, really seriously, that you understand that it's a sacred mission, and that informs everything that you do, right? And that's how it works with cannabis. If you work with the spirit of the plant, you work with each other, and you work to build community, and you do that in an honest and a loving way, then you create something that's just amazing and that's spectacular. And our community is so vibrant. We are so creative. We are so resilient. We are so strong, right? That that when you just create a space and an identity to let that community introduce itself to each other and flourish within, all sorts of magical things then just start popping out and on their own almost, right? And you guys have seen it happen over and over and over again. So that's what makes you the tip of the spear, the leading edge of what's happening here, both in terms of the movement, right? Because people have to have something to believe in. They have to know what that freedom tastes and feels like in order to fight for it, right? You need to go for it. So you guys, you gave people a little bit of a taste of what that freedom could taste like, could be, right? It's just like in California, nobody went and got cards from their doctors and paid $150 for a recommendation until there were dispensaries where you could buy weed, right? And same thing in New York. I think that the enthusiasm that the monkey drove really energized the community. It showed the sense of possibility, and it introduced to people, right? I mean, how many people met each other at the Happy Monkey who never would have met each other in the cannabis community otherwise, right?
Even me. I met the late great Doug Green. We became friends. We would have never, in any other circumstance in the world, that he knows that we come from two different worlds. He's from the suburbs, I'm from the city, and from the city, like I said, from the city is the part that nobody goes to. So we became friends like this. It was crazy. So,
Aaron, our videographer, was earlier, asking us a few questions for an interview we have, and he asked me, said, how many people in relationships? I told them, people met at Happy Monkey, dated and got married.
Yes.
People created bonds and friendships that will last forever. People created business relationships that they made millions of dollars off, all of this, like you said, this community.
Yep. That's what's been missing for us. I mean, a lot of things have been taken from us with prohibition. Our security, our sense of security, our access to medicine, our mental peace and ease has been taken away from us. But the taking away of community has made all of those other things worse, right? Because as long as we've got community, as long as we have a space that we can come together, that we can meet each other, that we can be there for each other, you can get through all that other shit, right?
Yep.
But when you take that center away, when you make it impossible for us to know each other, when you make it impossible for us to physically get together with each other and meet each other and do all this stuff, then that's a terrible blow that's really hard to overcome, right? And so creating community, and that's part of the reason that this Mother Nature gave us this plant, and it's at the central part of the mission that we're up to here, right? Beyond legalization, what are we trying to do? We're trying to bring people together. We're trying to bring people from the part of the city that other people never fucking go to to the people from the suburbs who are living in the places that people around the world dream of being in, right? Bring everybody together. And that's not something that, like, that just starts with legalization. That's just the beginning, right? It's the beginning of that makes the other work possible.
Word.
All right.
Now, Steve, I want to thank you for those kind
Absolutely.
words.
This
I
was
want to
dope.
thank you for always believing and supporting us,
Hell
for
yeah,
coming
man.
coming over here on the boulevard and gracing the people with, you know, knowledge and insight which they need.
Yeah,
Because you
man.
know, like, you know, we were talking about earlier, like, you know, me and Ramon, I'm born and raised here all my life. I'm an industry insider, played a role in everything that happened, and it really hasn't sunk in for me that it's over.
Yeah.
It's been so long.
Yeah.
Ramon earlier, we were hanging out. He's like,
Yeah.
I need to roll up. And he's like, he was looking for a spot to roll up. And he's like, oh, I don't have to look for a spot anymore. But
Right.
it's been
But,
so
I mean,
long.
I was in the car and I was driving and I was like, you know, anxiety. And I didn't say anything because I was thinking in my head like, damn, I need to find a spot. I need to find a spot. And I kind of thought to myself and I said it out loud to Vlad, like, yo, I'm looking for a spot to roll up. He's like, no. And we're like, no, we don't got to do that shit. I can just pull over
It's
right
been
here
so
and roll
long,
up.
Steve.
Right?
But
Yeah.
38 years have been. I only lived here all my life. He only lived here all his life. It's
Yeah.
been 38 years of oppression. So now, even though we played a role and it's over, it's still like
Yep.
sinking in and dialing in.
Practice makes perfect.
We're here though, and I think it was absolutely pleasure having you back in the city. It was great walking in the parade with you, my friend, and sharing that walk and sharing emotional
Yeah.
moments. And it's a pleasure, my friend. We thank you for coming. And you want to hit them with the wrap up, my friend? How you always get them?
Yes. I wanna tell you guys, man. You know, this year's looking very optimistic. The energy is looking amazing.
yes.
Remember, ladies and gentlemen, you're too blessed to be stressed. Things will get greater later. For now, checking out Vlad, Steve, Ramon. Till the next episode. Peace, love, and happiness.
What's good, everybody? This is your nigga Ralph, trying to keep you fresh with the info from Happy Monkey every single podcast. You already know what it is. If you haven't followed us yet, follow us on Instagram at HappyMonkey_ or Happy Monkey Goodies. Now remember, that's monkey with a U. Also, if you haven't checked us out, we're on YouTube. So check out our channel, Happy Monkey TV. Keep us current, live, and everything with the culture.